The storm outside had just begun. But inside a dark bedroom, a 7-year-old girl was shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. Her mother lay broken on the floor. The man who did it was still in the house. With tears blurring the screen, the little girl typed a message no child should ever have to send. He broke Mom's arm. Please help us. She hit send, not knowing she had texted the wrong number, and that the person who received it was a biker who replied with just 3 words. I'm on my way. Her name was Emily Carter. She was only 7 years old. Too young to understand why fear had become normal in her home. Too young to know why her heart raced every time his footsteps echoed through the house. On the living room floor, her mother lay unconscious, her arm twisted in a way arms were never meant to bend. Emily knelt beside her, whispering her name, begging her to wake up. Somewhere behind her, the man responsible staggered through the kitchen, angry, drunk, and unpredictable. Emily didn't scream. She didn't cry out for neighbors. She did the only thing she could think of. She held onto hope with both hands. If you believe that no child should ever face fear alone, stay with us. This story will remind you that help can come from the most unexpected places. Earlier that year, Emily's school had sent home a small safety flyer. It listed emergency contacts, numbers to call if a child was ever in danger. Emily barely remembered it. But in her panic, one number burned into her mind. Her hand shook as she unlocked the old, cracked phone. The screen flickered. Her fingers slipped. Letters blurred through tears. She didn't notice the mistake. She didn't double-check the number. She just typed the truth. He broke Mom's arm. Please help us. And with one trembling tap, she hit send. She had no idea she'd sent it to the wrong number, or that this single mistake would change her life forever. Miles away from Emily's fear-filled home, in a cluttered garage lit by a single buzzing bulb, a man named Jack Morgan wiped rainwater and grease from the handlebars of his motorcycle. His leather vest hung heavy on his shoulders, marked with the scars of long highways and hard years. The emblem on his back read Savage Wings, a biker club known for riding loud and living rough. To most people, Jack looked intimidating. A man you wouldn't approach in the dark. But beneath the leather and silence lived a past he never talked about. A childhood filled with shouting walls, broken glass, and a mother who cried quietly so no one would hear. Jack had once been a frightened boy who waited for help that never came. Now, he was a man who never ignored a cry for help, no matter where it came from. As he reached for a rag, his phone buzzed on the workbench. An unfamiliar number. Probably a wrong text, or spam. He glanced at the screen. And in that instant, everything inside him went still. Jack didn't move at first. He just stared at the screen, the glow of the phone lighting up the scars on his knuckles. He broke Mom's arm. Please help us. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. Suddenly, he wasn't standing in his garage anymore. He was 8 years old again, hiding behind a bedroom door, listening to his mother cry. Listening to plates shatter. Waiting for footsteps to stop. Back then, Jack had believed help would come. That someone, somewhere, would hear them. No one ever did. The garage felt colder now. The hum of the light above him sounded louder. His jaw tightened as anger and guilt mixed with something heavier, responsibility. He knew nothing about the sender. Didn't know where they were. Didn't even know if it was real. But he knew one thing for certain. A child had reached out into the darkness. And he had caught it. Jack's fingers finally moved. Slow. Steady. He typed 3 words, not as a question. Not as a hope. But as a vow. I'm on my way. And the moment he hit send, Jack Morgan became the man he once needed. Jack didn't waste another second. He slid the phone into his pocket and grabbed his leather vest from the workbench. The weight of it settled on his shoulders like armor, familiar, comforting. He pushed the garage door open and the night rushed in. Rain slammed against the pavement, hard and unforgiving, turning the streets into rivers of black glass. Jack swung his leg over the motorcycle and turned the key. The engine roared to life, loud, angry, alive, slicing through the silence of the sleeping town. As he pulled onto the road, the world narrowed to headlights, rain, and instinct. The address in the message was a mess. Misspelled street name. Wrong house number. Any GPS would have failed him. But Jack didn't rely on maps. He relied on memory. On experience. On the kind of intuition you earn after growing up in places where help never came. He passed closed diners, flickering streetlights, empty bus stops, places where desperate people waited for rides that never arrived. Each block he crossed, his grip tightened on the handlebars. Somewhere out there, a little girl was counting seconds. Listening for footsteps. Wondering if she'd made a mistake by sending that message at all. Rain soaked through Jack's gloves, the cold biting into his skin, but he didn't slow down. He leaned into the wind, into the storm, into the fear, using it as fuel. The motorcycle fishtailed slightly on a sharp turn. Jack corrected it without thinking. He'd survived worse roads than this. His mind replayed the words over and over. Please help us. Not help me. Us. That single word told him everything. He scanned porches, windows, yards, looking for signs no one else would notice. A light left on too late. A curtain that moved and froze. A house that felt wrong. And then he saw it. A small rental house near the edge of the block. One porch light flickering like a dying heartbeat. Jack eased off the throttle. The engine lowered to a growl. He knew. He killed the engine and let the silence settle. Somewhere inside that house, a child had trusted a stranger. Jack stepped off the bike, rain pouring down his face, and walked toward the door, carrying every promise he'd ever wished someone had kept. Inside the house, time had lost its meaning. Emily sat frozen behind the couch, her knees pulled tight against her chest. Her small fingers digging into the carpet as if it could somehow hold her in place. The air felt thick, heavy with the smell of spilled alcohol and something worse, fear. On the living room floor, her mother lay completely still. Sarah's face was pale, her breathing shallow and uneven. Her arm lay bent at a horrifying angle, already beginning to swell. Emily crawled toward her on shaking hands. "Mommy, please wake up," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the rain tapping against the windows. She pressed her ear against her mother's chest, counting breaths the way she'd seen on TV. 1, 2, 3. Each pause between them felt like a lifetime. Behind her, a cabinet slammed open. Emily flinched. The sound of glass bottles clinking together echoed through the kitchen as Lucas staggered from drawer to drawer. Muttering curses under his breath, words Emily had learned to fear long before she understood their meaning. "Useless, always useless," he growled, knocking something over. Emily's stomach twisted. She knew this pattern. When he drank too much, the house stopped being a home and became a trap. She scrambled back behind the couch, pulling the phone close to her chest like a shield. The screen lit up her tear-streaked face as she stared at Jack's reply. "I'm on my way." She didn't know who he was. Didn't know if he was real. But those 3 words were the only thing standing between her and the darkness closing in. Footsteps staggered closer. Heavy. Angry. Emily held her breath as Lucas entered the living room. He looked down at Sarah's unmoving body and scoffed. "Get up," he snapped, nudging her with his foot. "Always pretending." Sarah didn't move. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face, quickly replaced by rage. "Don't ignore me," he shouted, kicking the coffee table hard enough to rattle the walls. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She thought about running. But her legs wouldn't move. She thought about screaming. But fear stole her voice. All she could do was wait. The rain outside grew louder. Thunder rolled in the distance, shaking the windows. Lucas turned suddenly, scanning the room. "I know you're here," he slurred. Emily shrank deeper into the shadows, pressing her hand over her mouth to stop a sob from escaping. Seconds stretched. Then, far away, barely audible beneath the storm, something new cut through the night. A low rumble. An engine. Emily's eyes snapped open. The sound grew closer, then softer, then stopped. Silence followed, thick and unnatural. Lucas frowned. What the hell? Emily's heart leapt into her throat. Was it him? Or was it someone worse? She clutched the phone tighter as footsteps approached the front door from outside. And then, knock. Slow. Firm. Controlled. Emily felt it in her bones. Someone had come. The knock came slowly at first, then again, firm, steady, impossible to ignore. Lucas froze mid-step, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. He hadn't expected anyone at this hour. The storm rattled the windows as if nature itself was holding its breath. Jack's shadow appeared in the doorway first. Rain poured down his shoulders, dripping from his beard and hair, glinting off the leather of his vest. The room seemed to shrink. Air grew heavier. Lucas's confidence wavered for the first time in years. Jack didn't speak. Didn't shout. He simply stood there, a towering figure carved from storms and silence. His eyes scanned the room in one slow, deliberate sweep. First the little girl huddled behind the couch, trembling but clinging to hope. Then the mother lying unconscious on the floor. Then the man who thought he controlled everything. For a heartbeat, time froze. Lucas realized too late that he had wandered into a corner he couldn't escape. Jack took a single step forward. Rainwater dripped from the edge of his vest. His presence alone pushed the violence into a corner, leaving only fear behind. Emily peeked over the couch. Her heart thundered in her chest. She didn't understand why she felt relief the instant she saw him. Jack knelt slowly to her eye level, careful, calm, protective. His gaze softened as he looked at her. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I'm here now." Emily exhaled a shaky breath she hadn't even realized she'd been holding. For the first time tonight, the room felt less like a cage. Lucas tried to speak, tried to regain control, but his voice faltered under Jack's stare. He looked smaller. Weaker. Jack didn't threaten. Didn't yell. He simply stood between Lucas and the people he had come to protect. And in that moment, Emily understood she wasn't alone anymore. Jack moved without hesitation. Every step measured, controlled, confident. He knelt beside Sarah, his hands gentle but firm, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. "Mom, it's okay." "I'm here," Emily whispered, barely above a breath, clutching her mother's hand. Jack checked Sarah's breathing, her pulse, and the angle of her arm. He applied just enough support to ease the pain, careful not to cause further injury. Lucas stumbled forward, trying to regain his authority, but Jack's presence was a wall he could not penetrate. "Stay back," Jack said quietly, each word carrying the weight of steel. Lucas faltered, suddenly aware that he was powerless. Jack pulled out his phone and called 911, his voice steady and commanding despite the chaos around him. He gave the operator Emily's voice trembling through the background, the address, the situation, everything necessary to bring help. The rain outside continued to pour, turning the porch into a sheet of water, but Jack didn't notice. All his focus was on Emily and her mother. Minutes felt like hours. Emily stayed at her mother's side, leaning against Jack's leather-clad shoulder, her small fingers gripping him as if he were the only thing keeping the world together. The distant wail of sirens finally reached their ears, cutting through the storm and Lucas's angry muttering. Jack helped Sarah onto a stretcher as paramedics arrived, explaining her injuries, her current state, and the danger Lucas posed. Emily held tightly to Jack's hand, refusing to let go. Lucas was quickly restrained by police officers. For the first time tonight, he realized there were consequences he could not control. Jack stayed by Emily's side as they wheeled her mother to the ambulance. Rain streamed down their faces, mixing with tears, but it no longer mattered. As the ambulance doors closed, Jack mounted his motorcycle and followed at a safe distance, making sure mother and daughter were truly safe. In the quiet of the ride, Emily rested her head against his vest. Jack could feel her tiny breaths even out. For the first time in decades, he felt a warmth he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. The weight of making a difference, of saving someone who had no one else. And as the ambulance disappeared into the night, Jack realized that in helping Emily and her mother, they had saved him too. At the hospital, the storm had finally passed, leaving the world wet but quiet. Emily sat in a stiff chair beside her mother's bed, her small hands clasped tightly over her lap. Jack stayed close, leaning against the wall, his leather vest still carrying the scent of rain and roads traveled. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting IVs, and giving updates on Sarah's recovery. Each time, Emily exhaled a little easier. Sarah stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Jack," she whispered, her voice weak but full of gratitude. Jack simply nodded, letting her words sink in without needing thanks. Emily climbed onto the chair and rested her head against his chest. "You came," she murmured, her tiny voice full of awe and relief. "I promised," Jack replied softly. "And I always keep my promises." In the following days, Jack helped patch up the house. He fixed the broken door, ensured locks worked properly, and returned with groceries and supplies to make life a little safer. Slowly, laughter returned to the house. Emily's giggles echoed through rooms that had once only carried fear. Mother and daughter began healing, physically and emotionally. Sarah found courage she thought had been lost forever. Emily found the innocence she had been robbed of. And Jack found a purpose he hadn't realized he was missing. Sometimes, the wrong number really was the right one. And in this quiet hospital room, in this small house, all three of them discovered that safety, love, and second chances were not just dreams. They were real. Jack stayed for as long as needed, letting Emily ride safely on his motorcycle on quiet streets, letting her laugh, letting her be a child again. And saving them, he had been saved too. Sometimes, one small action can change 3 lives forever. One message. One reply. One act of courage. Emily's message reached the wrong number. And yet it reached exactly the right person. Jack Morgan didn't just save a little girl and her mother. He reminded us all that hope can arrive when we least expect it. Now we want to hear from you. If you received a message like Emily's, what would you do? Comment below. Share this story to remind someone that kindness and courage still exist in the world. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because every like, every comment, every share helps bring stories like this to people who need hope, courage, and a reminder that heroes can come from the most unexpected places.